After saying goodbye to his best friend, Cal gets on his bike and heads to school. On the way, he sees his classmates driving cool cars while using certain illegal substances and realizes that it's not a good idea to hang out with them. As he climbs the stairs to get to his classroom, Cal sees a coin on the floor and bends down to pick it up, unaware that he is falling into a trap. While the young man is bent over trying to pick up the coin, a troublemaker named Ronnie appears and pushes him. After gathering all his books, Cal gets up and walks toward his classroom. Then Cecily notices that he has dropped something and decides to pick it up to return it to him. Later, during the test, Hank sits at the desk behind Cal to copy his answers, but the teenager tries to cover his test to prevent him from cheating. Furious, the delinquent forces Cal to let him see his test, and Mr. Tally soon realizes what is happening. However, instead of just penalizing Hank for trying to cheat, the teacher calls Cal's attention and says he will fail him if he continues trying to pass the test answers to his classmates. In the next class, Cal spots Gabriella, the girl he has had a platonic crush on since 8th grade, and begins to draw her face in his notebook. When he hears the teacher asking them to form groups of 3 for an activity, Cal rushes to be in the same group as the young woman, who is Vic's girlfriend. When he finds out that his friend likes a girl who is already taken, Borgie scolds him, but Cal can't help admiring Gabriella's beauty during the break. Later, during art class, Cecily returns the somewhat embarrassing object that Cal had lost and takes the opportunity to strike up a conversation with him. Upon discovering that her classmate plans to attend college in Rhode Island, the young woman is saddened to learn that he will be leaving soon, and Cal states that he intends to stay as far away from that city as possible. After class, before leaving, the young man decides to talk to Gabriella and invites her to be his date for the upcoming dance. However, the girl says she will not attend the event, and as she is leaving, Cal throws the drawing into her backpack. When he arrives at the parking lot, the young man is confronted by Hank, who accuses him of snitching on him to Mr. Tally. Even after Cal insists he didn't do it, Hank steals his bike and lures him to the back of the bleachers. Once there, Vic tries to convince Cal to talk to the teacher and say that Hank wasn't cheating, because if he can't participate in the next game due to his grade, his entire team will be hurt. After hearing this story, Cal insists on refusing to help Hank get away with it, so the students decide to take revenge. While Vic holds Cal, his friends help put him inside a barrel and push the teenager down the stairs. Because of this, he arrives late for work and gets into trouble with his boss, who threatens to fire him. When he finally gets home, Cal is greeted by Runt, who runs to lie down next to him. Realizing that the dog wants to play, the young man makes an effort to get up and spend time with him, knowing that Runt has been home alone all day. Hours later, when night falls, his mother comes home and goes straight to her room, as she needs to rest to go to work the next morning. The next day, when he arrives at school, Cal is summoned to the principal's office, as Kyle, the janitor, claims to have seen the young man being attacked by students on the soccer field. In an attempt to help him, Carrie asks what happened, but Cal feels pressured when the coach shows up in the room with Vic. To try to cover up the real reason for the fight, Vic shows the drawing that Cal put in his girlfriend's backpack and claims that he is stalking Gabriella. When questioned again by the principal, Cal says that nothing happened on the soccer field, and from that day on, he begins to avoid any contact with Hank and his friends. In the late afternoon, as he picks up his bike to go to work, Cal is surprised by Cecily's sudden approach, who invites him to be her date at the dance. However, the young man declines the invitation and says he has no interest in going to the party. Later, after a long day of work at the supermarket, Cal returns home completely exhausted and sees Cecily sitting in front of the library. At that moment, he changes his mind about going to the dance and accepts her invitation to be her date. When she sees the injuries on Cal's face, the young woman asks what happened, and he says he fell off his bike, as he is ashamed to tell the truth. After talking for a few minutes, Cecily asks for a ride home, but on the way, they both end up in a minor accident. After the fall, the young woman starts laughing and thanks Cal for accompanying her home. At that moment, the young man realizes that he is beginning to develop an interest in her, and this time, when he gets home, Cal refuses to go out for a walk with Runt, as he is completely exhausted. The next day, he overhears the coach talking to Mr. Tally about Hank's grades and realizes that even though he refused to help the delinquent, he will still get away with cheating. During literature class, when the groups meet again, Gabriella apologizes to Cal for what happened and tells him that Vic freaked out with jealousy when he saw the drawing he made. In an attempt to compensate the young man for the discomfort caused, Gabriella invites him to a party at her boyfriend's house, and Cal naively considers the idea of going to Vic's house. After class, Borgie goes to his friend's house to practice shooting and finds out that Cal has been invited by Gabriella to a party. Excited to keep the young man company, Borgie tries to convince him to accept the invitation, saying that Gabriella may have started to develop romantic feelings for him. Suddenly, during the conversation, Cal realizes that his dog has disappeared and begins to search for him desperately. However, he soon realizes that Runt is only a few meters away and feels relieved. After petting his dog, Cal decides to go to the party to find Gabriella, and Borgie celebrates the fact that he can join the cool kids at school. Upon arriving at Vic's house, Borgie quickly finds a way to infiltrate a group of girls while Cal goes looking for Gabriella. At that moment, the young man realizes that in every corner of the house, there are teenagers using certain illegal substances, and he begins to regret going to that place. However, when he finds Gabriella, all his regrets disappear and Cal is mesmerized. Minutes later, Cecily shows up at Vic's house with the goal of finding the young man she likes, and Cal is also happy to see her. Realizing that Borgie is completely out of control, he invites Cecily to talk outside and offers her his jacket when he notices that she is cold. At that moment, Hank looks out the window and notices that Cal is with a girl, so he calls his friends to go after him. With the help of his gang, Vic locks the young man in the trunk of his car and tries to attack Cecily in revenge for Cal getting close to his girlfriend. Terrified by the situation, the young woman begins to cry. When he realizes that something is happening to Cecily, Cal starts kicking the car seat to get out and help her. Luckily, Gabriella shows up just in time and pushes her boyfriend to leave Cecily alone. When he finally manages to get out of the vehicle, Cal finds Cecily traumatized, and she takes her car to leave that place. The next day, after telling Borgie what happened, Cal blames his friend for not being there to help him and decides to end their friendship. Feeling guilty about what happened at the party, Gabriella decides to try to reconnect with Cal and leaves an origami on his desk. However, the young man no longer wants any contact with her and throws the paper in the trash so that Gabriella gets the message. At the end of class, when he picks up his bike to go to work, Cal realizes that the chain has been cut and soon discovers that Hank was the vandal responsible for doing it. Desperate, the young man runs to the supermarket, but ends up getting fired by the manager for being late. Hours later, when he finally arrives home after a long walk, Cal secretly takes his mother's car to get revenge on Hank, as he feels that this was the last straw. Seeing his owner get into the vehicle, Runt decides to follow him and accompanies him on his mission of revenge. After checking what Hank is doing and seeing that there is no one around, Cal tries to slash the tires, but soon realizes that his knife is not sharp enough. So, the young man takes the fuel used to light the barbecue and, driven by anger, sets the vehicle on fire. As soon as the flames spread, Vic runs to put out the fire, and while calling the police, Hank spots Cal running away with his dog. The next morning, while eating his bowl of cereal, Cal thinks back on what he did the night before and feels deeply remorseful. When his mother leaves for work, the young man fixes his bike and goes to Cecily's house to try to apologize for what happened the other day. However, the young woman's father says she is not home, so Cal decides to look for her at the library. While waiting for Cecily to show up, the young man ends up being seen by Hank, who manages to identify him thanks to his dog. Terrified, Cal tries to run away with Runt and hides next to a trash can. When he realizes that Hank has left, the young man comes out of his hiding place, and on his way home, he decides to buy brass knuckles to defend himself. Later, he receives a message from Cecily and goes to meet her with his dog. During their conversation, the girl tells him that her father is on parole and decided not to tell him what happened for fear of what he might do to Vic. If he decided to get back at the delinquent, her father would go back to jail, and that's the last thing Cecily wants to happen. According to the young woman, there is a rumor going around school that Cal set Vic's car on fire, and upon hearing this, the young man realizes he is in trouble. Before saying goodbye, Cecily asks if Cal will show up at school the next day and advises him to be careful, as Vic and his friends will be after him. When he arrives at school, Cal discovers that it was Borgie who cut the chain on his bike because he was hurt by his friend. When he discovers the truth, the young man realizes that Vic and Hank have even more reasons to attack him and tries to avoid their group at all costs. However, at the end of class, Cal ends up being cornered in the parking lot, and upon hearing the fight, dozens of students gather around them. While Cal is attacked by Vic and his gang, Cecily tries to calm the fight, but is completely ignored. Luckily, Mr. Tally shows up just in time, and before running away, Cal breaks Vic's finger. On the way home, Cal is stopped by Ronnie, who says he followed him to congratulate him on his courage in standing up to Vic. After arriving home, Cal thanks Ronnie for the ride and accepts his invitation to go bowling that night. Before entering the house, the young man picks up a letter from the mailbox sent by the university where he plans to study the following year, and when he opens the door, he finds Runt waiting to play with his ball. After playing with his dog all afternoon, he meets Ronnie at the bowling alley and is praised for his performance in the game. During their conversation, Ronnie says that he stopped using illegal substances after his stepfather mixed bleach into his drink without his knowledge. After using it that way, the young man's blood vessels became blocked and he had to be rushed to the hospital. After that episode, where he thought he would lose his life, Ronnie had migraines for 6 months and never went near any illegal substances again. In addition to suffering from frequent bleeding, he was forced to give up sports, as his performance on the field was never the same again. After having fun with his new friends, Cal invites Cecily to his house, since his mother will be working late that night. While talking to Cal, Cecily realizes that he has a huge affection for his dog, and the young man reveals that he found Runt wandering around the oil fields when he was still a puppy. Later, while the couple is watching a movie, Runt starts whining for attention, and Cal decides to put him outside until Cecily leaves. Minutes later, he hears the dog barking, but instead of getting up to see what's going on, Cal remains lying on the couch. While watching the movie, the two young people end up falling asleep, and the next morning, Cal wakes up. While snooping around the young man's room, Cecily finds the letter sent by the University of Rhode Island and realizes that he hasn't opened the envelope yet. When he finally works up the courage to see the result, Cal discovers that he has not been accepted, which means that he and Runt will have to move to Los Angeles, as the young man has won a scholarship to the University of California. After saying goodbye to Cecily, Cal looks for his dog so they can have breakfast, and begins to worry when Runt doesn't show up. At that moment, the young man decides to go out and look for him and finds his baseball bat covered in blood. Terrified, the young man follows the bloodstains on the floor, and when he opens the trash can, he finds Runt's body. Devastated by the loss of his dog, Cal gathers all of Runt's belongings that were scattered around the house and buries them along with the animal's body. After mourning the tragic loss of his best friend, Cal is overcome with anger and goes to school thirsting for revenge. When confronted, Vic denies any involvement in what happened to Runt, and Hank orders the young man to back off if he doesn't want to cause more trouble. Cecily then approaches Cal to talk to him, but he completely ignores her. Throughout the morning, the young man's mind is preoccupied with devising a plan for revenge, and he can't focus on anything else. When he sees the football team entering the field to practice before the big game, the young man has the perfect idea to make them pay. When she finds out what happened to Runt, Cecily understands why Cal is acting that way and soon realizes that Vic is involved. A few days later, during an event in the school gym, Cal shows up and the students push him onto the court, knowing he has a feud with Vic. Seeing him approach, the delinquent orders Cal to back away and imitates the sound Runt made in his last seconds of life. At that moment, Cal is certain that Vic was the one who attacked his dog, and he waits for the day of the big game to put his plan into action. While the teams are on the field, Cal evades security to break into the locker room and mix bleach into Hank's stash of banned substances. At the end of the first half, Coach Wilkes gathers his players to give them a scolding, as they are losing to the opposing team. Seeing his friends in trouble, Vic regrets the fact that he has a broken finger and cannot play to help them achieve victory. Minutes before the second half begins, Hank and Javier go to the locker room to use the banned substance that will give them the strength they need to win the game. However, as soon as the substance enters their bodies, the players realize that something is wrong and try to expel it. Hearing the boys' screams, the coach rushes to help them and calls an ambulance to take them to the hospital. When he finds out what happened to his friends, Vic panics, as they have just lost one of the biggest opportunities of their lives and are at risk of not being able to get into college. After Hank and Javier are taken to the hospital, Cal goes after Vic and finds him crying outside the field. At that moment, he approaches and reveals that he was responsible for what happened to Vic's friends. Upon discovering the truth, the young man runs after Cal with the aim of avenging his friends, but ends up being lured into an empty courtyard behind the school. When he realizes that no one is around, Cal picks up the baseball bat Vic used to eliminate his dog and starts hitting him. While venting all his anger, the young man forces Vic to confess his crime and discovers that the delinquent went to his house with the intention of attacking him. However, upon realizing the invasion, Runt acted to defend his territory and ended up being eliminated instead of Cal. Concerned about Cal's disappearance, Cecily and Borgie decide to go after him and start searching for him throughout the school. While the two boys fight, Borgie appears with his mother's gun and fires into the air in order to stop the fight. Seeing his friend armed, Cal panics and tries to convince him to drop the gun. At that moment, Vic picks up his cell phone to call the police, but is stopped by Cal, who destroys the device. After taking the gun, Cal orders Borgie to go home while he goes after the delinquent who is trying to escape. When he realizes that the young man is willing to pull the trigger at any moment, Vic decides to apologize for what he did, but Cal says that his apology won't bring Runt back. At that moment, Cecily appears and tries to stop her friend from taking action that will destroy his own life. In an attempt to prevent Cal from being arrested, the girl asks him to drop the gun and hands her friend the baseball bat so he can avenge Runt without ending Vic's life. Realizing that the young man is badly injured, Cecily decides to break up the fight and accompanies Cal to the parking lot. Concerned about what might happen to the girl, Cal advises her to go home and tell the police that she spent the whole night there. However, instead of doing so, Cecily says she will stay with Cal, and they join hands to go to the dance together. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.